Hi, everybody. I'm Ralph Ben-Murgy. Welcome to Not That Kind of Rabbi. I hope you're having something with all this pandemic crazy going on that is in any way amenable to the way you'd like to live your life. It's an interesting time. I'll get into that in a moment. I do have some news. Part of that news is you can now pre-order a book I've written. It'll be out in the end of September. But it's a book that I wrote, a spiritual memoir, and it's called I Thought He Was Dead. So I've been sending it around to a few people for some comments and thoughts about what they thought. I've been getting some lovely responses, which is great because when you write a book, you're sitting alone in a room and thinking, I don't know, this could be horrible. It's like trying to write comedy. When you're doing it by yourself, it's like, I don't know. I think it's funny. So it's called I Thought He Was Dead. You can get it on pre-order on Amazon, Indigo Chapters, my publisher, Woolsack and Wynn. You can get it from them as well. And if you do, great. I'd love it. I'd love to hear what you think about it and all the rest of it. You can go to my Not That Kind of Rabbi Facebook page and give me your comments on the book. Some of the people who I've asked to comment on it, Peter Mansbridge, Kathleen Wynn, Drew Hayden Taylor, just lots of different people. And it's lovely to have people, Michael Corrin, to talk about it. So I'm excited and I hope that you get a chance to read it. As well, I should point out to people that we are on Patreon and you can help by first subscribing to this podcast, which doesn't cost you anything, but any kind of donation is more than welcome. There's tiers on Patreon if you know how it works. So you go to patreon.com/NTKR, kind of not that kind of rabbi. So patreon.com/NTKR. And any support is more than appreciated by myself in terms of doing this podcast, which I very much enjoy. So that's a little bit of house cleaning and business, as it were. So let's get to this idea. In about 50 years ago, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan became the political champions of the neoliberal movement in the world. Milton Friedman, a few others, had just something that I've always found startling as a definition of how we should organize ourselves as people. And Margaret Thatcher encapsulated it the best of anyone when she said, there is no such thing as society. There are just people and families. And when I think about the situation we're in today, I realize that individualism, hyper-individualism, the individual over everything, nobody tells me what to do, is what's really muddying the waters in this really critical time, in my opinion. We're in a place where we could come together as society and benefit each other by becoming as safe as we can, or we can insist that, ironically, in this case, often you have people saying, it's my body, I make my decisions. And many of these same people, when it comes to a woman's right to choose, it's not her body, it's not her decision. So I find that ironic. But from a spiritual point of view, what I think is so sad is that we, instead of seeing the beauty and the spark in every person that we meet, which is there in a way that is incorruptible, if you can spend enough time with anyone, really. And the best route to that for me is curiosity, to be genuinely curious of another person's life and opinion. And we're not reaching that in each other. We're us against theming. We're individualizing. We're atomizing. We live alone. We wonder why we're lonely. And I think that, I was doing a workshop with some friends of mine from the Presbyterian side of life who were really questioning for themselves, what's the future after this pandemic of congregational life? People are online, more people than they get sitting in pews before this happened. So what do you do? How do you do this? What's the best way forward? And we realized that for a lot of people, the idea of sitting in a hierarchical congregational setting with a sage on the stage is no longer serving their purpose. But we did come to a different conclusion than stay home by yourself and witness the service in some way. And that was the idea that we have to find a way to embody spiritual life with each other, that we have to create experiences together that flatten the hierarchy and bring us together. So for me, I'm hoping that out of this pandemic, instead of us turning on each other, which is happening because you have to ask different people, are you vaccinated? Are you unvaccinated? Am I safe? Am I unsafe? I hope we can find something better, because we have another crisis that we have to deal with. And my blog on my Patreon account is about this idea that the climate is a spiritual crisis, because if there is nothing sacred of the earth, then we can rape the earth at the rate we are doing it. So those are just some things that I wanted to talk about and think about with you as the listeners to this podcast. Now, today, I have decided, hoped, and found out that I could speak to somebody who I don't know well. We come from the same showbiz tribe, but we've never hung out more than a little. But I noticed on social media a journey that he's been through, and I wanted him to talk about it because what I saw in his journey was something beautiful and something graceful. And I really wanted to just explore that with him. So my guest today on Not That Kind of Rabbi is Mackenzie Gray, and I'm going to make him appear. Welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm great, Ralph. How are you?
I'm good. I
liked what you had to say. That was very thoughtful and right along my line of thinking, actually. So,
but tell me more. What is your line of thinking?
Well, I think there's a danger in all this individualism. It's an aberrant sort of explosion of instant karma. John Lennon saying, who do you think you are, a superstar? Well, all right, you are. The idea that you can achieve anything, but it's become this centralized, it's all about me and my needs and what is important for me, and there's a collective thinking that's being dissolved by that kind of thinking. And it's in a pandemic, you think, well, we come together, we're all fighting this together, we all have the caution and the fear, and we're trying to override it and do it. But it seems to have been politicized to a point where it's exploited that sense of individualism to break our collective spirit. And I think that what the truth will come out when we're finally through it. Are we all going to be so happy to be able to be together again that we appreciate the things we took for granted before? I hope that's my hope.
Yeah.
But right now it's too fragmented right now.
It just brought to mind you speaking just now. I thought of many lives ago. I did stand up through Yuck Yucks, and stand up is a very solitary event. You get up there and it's just you. So. Mark Breslin, who ran the place, and a few of us just thought, why don't we try doing an improv show? Because we're not Second City and we are a different animal, but maybe it'll work. And we'll do it on a Sunday night and small audience, see how it goes. And he said, well, you come from acting, Ralph, so, you run it. Okay. So I get the guys together. I think, I don't even know if any of our female comics got up that night, but we get them together, and I say, look, you can join what's on stage at any time. And the idea is to add and create layers and, not resist and just keep moving. And the guys, one by one, would get up there. And they were so individualized that all they could do is think of what great line they could spout at this moment in time.
Totally wrong for improv.
Right. What killer line am I going to do that's going to have everybody going, now that was a great sketch. And I realized they were not wired for communal life on stage.
No.
So when I think about that in the arts, it's like the actor who you're working with, and you realize they're actually not listening to what's going on stage here. They've decided that this is what they're going to do. And I'm sure you've bumped into that in your professional life.
Many, many times. And, when I teach, we always talk, yes is the answer, yes moves things forward. And you give them the example that if you do an improv and you say, oh, hey, is this where I catch the train to Detroit? And somebody says, no, well, it's over. And you have to do all the work. Oh, I thought it was. And when, but if you say yes, but it's not coming today. Oh, why? And then you've got a scene, right? Like yes moves things forward. But it's about sharing and about being generous, and actually I've been lucky that most actors I have worked with are pretty generous with each other. They've learned that you get more back, when you know how to give ground and give time and listen and all of that. But acting as a rule is a more collective experience,
Hopefully.
One person shows are the norm at fringe festivals, but not anywhere else, right?
Yes, because all you can afford is a one-person show at a fringe festival.
Well, the Arts Club right now, their whole this season, because of COVID, they are doing one-person shows.
So, So what do we do? Like, is there some way we can, and I'm thinking in spiritual terms, but is there some way we can walk across this bridge of being individuals? What's the incentive for us to come back together now, do you think?
Well, it's funny. We get collectively united when we have a passion. Like people who would never hang out together will say watch, the Leafs in the playoffs and go completely all in one for, Leafs one example, whatever. Or, we watch the Olympics and we cheer for the Canadian rowers or whatever, it's a collective thing that we've been doing individually, but when people get together, they go, oh, did you see that? And whatever, we share that experience. So I think that it's about reigniting not just our spiritual sort of awareness, but it's about passion for life. And it's about having a passion and making, just being every day, doing our daily things as exciting in our minds as watching a team we cheer for or whatever, and it's not an easy thing to construct, but I think that's one way we can do it is to remember, I've seen a lot of people posting on whether it's Facebook or social media or in conversation saying that they just miss hugging people or they miss being able to sit at a table and share experiences not on Zoom or whatever. And there's that collective desire is a passion. And I think that that's the passion we have to keep open, and it's going to be interesting. Broadway is opening in 2 or 3 weeks, and that's, for New York, that's such a huge event and it's a huge thing. And all those people employed in the theater and the actors, everybody's being very careful and being like, we don't want to mess this up. And they're hoping that the audiences will be careful. And so they're, making sure that you have to be vaccinated and so on. We have all these rules to try and protect what we want to preserve. And I think that it's just sad that there's still so many people out there who are living in willful ignorance, not getting vaccinated or not wearing masks. And to give you an example of an experience I had directly and personally with a person who didn't want to accept the norm. When I was in the hospital, when I had my leg amputated, they send you to a rehabilitation hospital and you live there for several months where you learn how to walk again and all those things. And in the room just down the hall from us, to one room away, there was a guy, we called him English Bob because he was a little like that character in Unforgiven, but I won't say his real name, but we called him English Bob. And he was anti-masker, he didn't believe in it, he didn't like wearing them. And in the whole hospital, everybody had to wear masks all the time, except when you ate. And he wouldn't do that. And he went to an appointment, some medical appointment that they let him out for. And he came back and then all of a sudden he's hacking and coughing and so on. And I stayed a mile away from him because I didn't like being near him anyway. And it turned out that he got COVID. And he was sharing a room with 3 other people. And they took him right away to St. Paul's Hospital and got him out, and they had to have the hazmat suits and everything else. And we weren't allowed in the hallways. And so we were in immediate lockdown where you can't leave your room. And it's 14 days and they test you every couple of days for COVID and so on. And anytime anybody else gets it, the 14 days start all over again. So his 2 roommates got it from him. They were healthy otherwise. And the 3rd roommate, he left, he said, I don't want to be here. And he checked himself out of the hospital. Well, he went home and he died. And then the two other roommates also died.
Wow.
In St. Paul's. So myself, I don't feel like it, I don't want to do it, killed 3 people. And we were locked down for 20 days in the hospital. So I couldn't leave that room for 20 days.
Wow.
And I mean, I was fine and safe and so on, but you have to do a lot of work in isolation like that to keep your brain from going nuts. And luckily we have, Netflix and TV and streaming, and we have so many means to keep ourselves. And I had a guitar that, and finally they gave me my legs so I could at least practice in the room, and walk around and do things. But the other thing you have to fight is a horrible rage against the guy who brought it in, because it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't serve any purpose to hate him or whatever. You can be annoyed or angry or say something, but it doesn't serve any purpose. It just eats you away, and the rage doesn't solve anything. So there was a lot of work to deal with that.
So I want to talk about forgiveness, but we'll talk about that a little in a minute, because you don't go by somebody saying, I had my leg amputated, and carry on the conversation as if he said, I parked my car in the wrong spot. So let's back up a bit.
Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Right.
I'm used to it.
You're used to it, I know. So it's just like, anyway, and then that happened. How did we get to an amputated leg?
Well, it's a bit of it's a little circuitous route, but I film and teach in El Salvador. There's a wonderful new film school called SAS in El Salvador. It's run by an amazing actress and director named Vanessa Tomasino. And Vanessa and I were friends. We did the Women in the Director's Chair in Banff, and we were actors there and so on. And we've been great friends ever since. So she flies me down to El Salvador, and I teach at her school for a few days around before Christmas or after Christmas or whatever. And we wrote a film that's going to showcase how beautiful El Salvador is, and these wonderful actors. And, a lot of the dramas they do, that if they haven't had a film industry before. A lot of them are very dark and negative and, about troubled people. And I wanted to do this romantic comedy. It's kind of a spiritual joyride, and it's a road movie. And we started shooting it. And while I was there, the place that we were staying, the water was, you couldn't drink. You had, they had bottled water and boiled water and stuff. But in the shower, you just have a shower. But I was being very careful because I'm a diabetic, and I don't, I got to watch and be careful. But I took a shower on the last day I was there, and because it was like 45 degrees, and a super microbe got in through the water into my foot. It could have been a little cut on my foot, could have been anything. And it got into my foot. Went several weeks without any particular problems, but then I was starting to feel sluggish and tired. And I was directing a film in Vancouver, and a student thing that with students. And I was just run down. I thought, it's because I'm working hard. I haven't had a break. And eventually my foot started to get a little swollen, a little bigger, but nothing visible. Checked with the podiatrist. No, you should be okay. And then on a weekend, I just couldn't even move. I was exhausted. My foot was the size of a football. And so went directly to the hospital, and I was dying on the table. I was in full septicemia, and the nurses kept having to slap me across the face to keep me from slipping away. And they told me, don't go. And I realized I didn't want to die. And I was digging my nails into my hands, and I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't want to go. And I was trying to fight to stay awake. And thank God for that nurse slapping me around. And so they cut my foot open with no anesthetic and took out a bunch of gangrene and stuff that had been just building up. And they tested it, and they found the super microbe and everything else. So I lost the toe and part of my foot, but it was healing. And I was in a cast boot and walking for ages. And then COVID hit, so there was no work. So it was a chance to try and take an easy recovery. And then it just wasn't healing. And there's a thing that diabetics are prone to. I'm a diabetic. That's called Charcot foot. And it's when infection gets into the bone, it just dissolves and breaks up the bone like an osteoporosis. And the Charcot foot got so bad there was nothing they could do, and they tried to save the foot. So the morning I went in, they were going to see if they could save the foot still, but they said, if we can't, we have to take the leg off. And I had to say yes. And I thought, well, if that's what happens, that's what happens. I mean, I don't want to die. And that's what happened. So when I came to and realized I didn't have one of my legs, I was prepared for it. And I'm a pretty tough guy. I mean, I got diabetes at 13, and I had to come face to face with my own mortality at 13 and do needles to stay alive every day. I can pretty good at taking tough news, but it was still kind of unreal. But I thought, how am I going to deal with this? Am I going to be, I'm not ever going to be poor me, or my life sucks or anything, because it doesn't. And I'm determined I'll walk again. They told me I would be able to, and so on. And so I took a picture the next morning, because I put on Facebook that I was facing this. I didn't know what would happen. So the next morning, you know how people take those pictures of their looking out over the Caribbean with their feet, they take a picture like, here I am on holiday. So I took a picture like that, but with one leg not there and one leg there of the view of the hospital bed. And I said, well, it's a pirate's life for me. I guess, it's not the end of the world, but I lost the leg. And the outpouring of love and affection and care and even and humor, it was unbelievable. Like I have a good rapport on Facebook with people, but it was literally in the thousands. It wasn't a few hundred. It was insane. And
what did that do for you?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. It just made me feel very loved and very supported and cared for. And even people that I know aren't, I'm not their favorite person, weighed in. People showed a great kindness. And that meant a lot. It was hugely restorative and helped me. So it also made me think that, anything I post about this, I'm going to try and be positive and be, even celebratory if I can. Like, hey, I walked today, or whatever it might be, and I had a goal in mind, which was that I wanted to be able to dance with my girlfriend by New Year's. Well, that was unrealistic, because I didn't even get the leg till January, but I still, this was in November. So, but I did get up from the wheelchair and dance with her and hung on to my balance and danced one leg. And I did the things I set as goals, right?
This is Not That Kind of Rabbi. I'm Ralph Ben-Murgy, and my guest this time is actor, director Mackenzie Gray. So let me ask then,
sorry.
I mean, it was inspiring to see your posts because you were making me and other people feel good instead of saying, look at me, this sucks.
Yeah.
But I wonder, where is there any sorrow, and where do you put it?
It's very little. I don't know. It comes in waves, and it's usually done. It usually comes in frustration, like when I'm trying to, put on my remaining leg, trying to put a sock on. Well, you can't. Usually, you have another foot to balance to put yourself up,
right.
And so if you drop things, it's not easy to pick them up. I mean, I'm getting better, but they gave us this, thing
to pick them up,
pick stuff up, and I just, to me, it's like, I might as well, one foot in an old folks home, and whatever, and not that there's anything wrong with old folks homes, but I'm not ready for that yet. So I use it to be smart, but I do try and pick things up, and sometimes it's frustrating.
And
but I think
that's the point of sorrow, where you just go, oh,
well, it's more
why did this happen to me?
I never say, why did this happen to me? Never, not once. I just don't, because that's my fate. If I'd done something foolish, or if I'd, not looked after myself or whatever, I'd go, okay, you might have that self-pity, but it just happened, and you accept what happens, and I think I credit my parents for being that way, because they were, my parents were older when they got married. My mom was 30 or 31, and my dad was 29. And in the 50s, that was old to get married, but they'd lived these full lives, like crazy lives. my mom was in the diplomatic corps, my dad was in the British SAS, and had been all over the place. And so they knew who they were when they got married. They weren't young people trying to figure out their lives as they figured out being parents.
Right.
And so they were very good about, and they'd both been through tough stuff, the depression, the war, all of that, so the way we were raised was to take your lumps and face it and don't whine about it, but just accept things and move on. And it's a really good mentality to have. And my sister has it, and my brother, my late brother now, also had it.
Sometimes it's though, for some people that somebody will say, this thing has happened, and what they'll get back is suck it up, buttercup. This is just the way things go. But when something happened to you, you didn't present yourself to people as, anyway, onward and upward. It was more, what was so touching to me that you actually exuded a joy. Like I saw joy on your face as you were holding on to 2 bars and looking up and going, how's it going? And I thought, you're making me feel better.
Oh, good.
Right? Instead of me going, oh, my thoughts are with you, poor you,
Yeah.
Screw this,
Look how much fun. It can be fun if you find anything. Life should be fun. There's a wonderful director who I adore working with named Ron Oliver. And he created Goosebumps way back in the day. And so he's a wonderful director. But if it's getting tense on set and people are getting all just mucked up, he'll stop and put on his iPod some dance tune, and you have to have a dance break. And everybody gets happy. And he stops it out and he says, okay, listen, remember, we're making movies. We get to do what we love. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
If it's not fun, why are we doing it? And that's my attitude generally in life. And not that you can't take it seriously or whatever, but there's got to be some point in it. And for instance, when I got the leg the first time, they put it on you and you feel it, and they've cast it, and you make sure it stands okay. You're supposed to stand up and let it fit, sit in the socket, and then you take 3 or 4 steps and you 3 back and you sit down and you're done. That's all they want you to try. And I was so happy to be upright, because I've got good balance. Actor training did come in handy, right? All those times I hated being in physical movement class, I'm so glad I did it. Right?
Your center. Yeah.
Your center, ooh, core.
Back then I thought, in that. Did you go 3 and backward? Or did you do more?
I did 3 and kept going. And the guy, my girlfriend filmed it, and the guy said, and he's off. We got to go get him. And then when I turned around to come back, I said, hey, I wonder if I can do an arabesque. And I held onto the bar, but I did an arabesque, and the physio people go, no. And I say, look, it's okay. So I was, like they were very, guarded about letting me have the leg, because, but it was like, that's how the only way I could deal with it was to see how much fun can I have with it, and can I do this? I mean, I might have only been able to lift the leg a little. I mean, I didn't do a full, National Ballet arabesque, but it was pretty good.
Is it amputated at the kneecap, below the
knee? I'm a below the knee.
Right.
So below the knee is it's a little easier to deal with, because they above the knee they have a knee joint built into the leg, and it's mechanical. It's much harder. But to talk about inspiration, there was a guy at the hospital. He was a young guy named Matt, big guy. He'd been a chef. He was a chef for one of the big chains like Earl's or whatever, and Cactus Club or something. And he had both legs amputated. And he was powering around. He was walking around, no canes, no nothing, powering around. He'd have this big thing of microwave popcorn that he'd put into the microwave, at night, and he'd get himself a big thing of pop that he kept in the fridge. And, I'm going to go watch a movie now. And he was powering around, and he was so inspiring. Because he'd lost both legs, and he was just, things like that can give you inspiration, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if he had moments of anger or frustration, but he couldn't go back to cooking, and that was what he didn't want to do, because it was just too difficult, and how messy it gets in kitchens, and it's unsafe. So but his other passion was computers, so he's gone into computer tech work, and I want to work with that idea in your life
of passion, which would have informed the choices you've made, to be in the arts, to be an actor, to be a director, to be in that group. What role has passion played in your life, and how does it help you now?
It's a huge part of my life. It's been encouraged all my life. Like as a kid, when I had a passion for something, I mean, I was nuts for hockey. I grew up in Toronto, grew up a little street called Reynolds Place. It was just off Collier Street. So, going into Rosedale, but really in Yorkville, I went to Jesse Ketchum Public School, and we all played hockey on the big rinks all the time. And Ramsden Park was my every Saturday in the winter was, skating, playing hockey. But it was always encouraged. My parents, when I was 5, got me an entire Toronto Maple Leafs hockey equipment, knee pads, like everything. I think my dad thought I was going to be his free ticket into Maple Leaf Gardens, but at any rate,
skate harder, son. Skate harder.
Oh, he wasn't like that. He was actually. I started playing I was in the MTHL, and I started playing a couple of years ahead of my age because I was fast and I had a good wrist shot.
Right.
Couldn't skate backwards to save my life, but they saw potential, and I ended up playing with older kids. But when you play with older kids, the older kids pick on you. So not so much in your own team, but the other teams, they learn where the cracks are, right?
Right.
And I was getting whammed into the boards and getting hurt and getting tripped all the time and stuff, and it just stopped being fun. And so my father just said, well, you can do the Gordie Howe with the elbows and stuff like that, but it wasn't my thing. And so he said, well, if you don't want to do it, then stop doing it. You got to love it.
Right.
And after that, I never played hockey again. I mean, I did with an actors league. Guy Sprung and a bunch of guys used to have an actors league.
Right.
We'd play at Moss Park, on Saturdays or whatever. And that was always fun because actors are not the face.
not the face.
keep the shots low.
What are you, nuts?
And then there's other guys, I won't say who, but there were some other guys who were like taping their fingers before they're ready for the, So the passion was still alive, but I put it into a place that I could enjoy it. And acting has been a passion since I was a kid. And I don't know if you saw that thing about Chris Plummer, I was introduced to him. My uncle was Robert Barclay. He was the founder of the Directors Guild of Canada. And he was a director. He did a lot of stuff with CBC with Fletcher Markle and Telescope and so on. And he was great friends with Chris Plummer. They started in theater together. And my mother knew Chris as well through my uncle. So they both wrote me a letter to meet him when he was doing Cyrano at the Royal Alex. And he took me backstage and showed me around how it worked. And he challenged me, if I was going to be an actor, that I had to take it seriously and do it 100% or not at all. And he explained about what it was. And he said, it's a small room that everybody wants to be in.
Right.
So if you are going to be in the room, you have to be committed to it 100%. And if you can't, if it's not, it's got to be a need. It's not just a want, it's a need. And that changed my life. I was 14 or 15. And it has to be. And if you feel that need going, then maybe step away or find another thing. But that profoundly changed my life.
Yeah.
And that's how I find it. So passion's driven me into everything I do. When I'm directing, I'm obsessed, and not to the point of endangering people or exploiting them or anything, but
I said jump. Yeah, no.
How high? But I take on things because of that passion. You say, how does it affect me? Yeah. Sometimes I dig myself in a deep hole because of that passion.
Well, how so?
You can bite off more than you can chew, or maybe I can chew it, but other people can't. You've got to. I did a film noir that did very well. It went to the Cannes Festival and VIFF and all. It went everywhere, and it was for Crazy Eights, which is a great program in Vancouver. That you get in the original thing. You got 800 feet of film, $800, and 8 days to make a film. And hence Crazy Eights. Now that it's digital and they don't, it's still you have 3 days to film it and 5 to finish it and edit it and score it and all of that. And it's a great program. It's sort of overseen by the Directors Guild of Canada. And mine was a film noir. I shot it in black and white. I shot it in 1940s locations. I had 102 people in it, 10 major characters, all costumed, all of that. And it was, we got it done and it was delivered. But the personal cost was I was exhausted and couldn't function after I'd finished it, because it was a 13-minute film, but literally you can't believe we shot it in 3 days, and it's a full original score and everything. So I was driving everybody. I need this music. I need, whatever. And I've done, so I thought, because I can do that, I can do it again. And I've tried to do some projects, and including a feature where you shot an entire feature in 11 days. And I was the lead. So I had to do 11 pages a day and also produce the thing. I wasn't directing it, I was producing it. But, and you leave yourself a shell, but then you've got something you've produced. I don't know.
With a price to pay, which is, the negotiation you have to make with yourself, I guess. So actually on the negotiation with oneself, when I realized I had to, when my leg was going funny just before the amputation, but I realized it was not getting better, I was offered an amazing role with 2 amazing Oscar-winning actors that was going to last 6 months. I won't say what it is because it's all top secret thing. But it would have been an amazing role. But I thought, if I take this and then I have to go, something happens, it's going to be worse. Right. The worst thing, because it'll, there's force majeures and they can sue you and all, but it's that. It was about my honesty about being healthy. And so I turned it down, and there was no negotiation. I just realized I need to be honest, and I need to know that this might go bad. So just turn it down. And it had been a lean year before that. So it was very hard to do that. On the other hand, when I finally had the leg cut off, I was dealing with some stuff, and I was changing agents and all sorts of stuff. And I just decided to put it all aside. Like, I don't even want to read the dailies. I don't want to, if friends say, hey, I just booked a role, I'll just say, great, fabulous, good for you. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to be, what am I missing? I'm not doing this now. I'm stepping away. Yeah, self-care. Healing was the most important thing. So since this is not that kind of rabbi, yes, spiritual life-wise, yes, what's been the arc of your spiritual life? Well, I think, as a boy, I sang in a choir. I was one of the lead choir boys at St. Paul's Church on Bloor Street. They had a famous choir run by Dr. Charles Peaker, and we, the boys, we listened to all the sermons because we sat through all of that, and they also had special classes for us if we wanted them. After the service, they had a Sunday school for us, but instead of it being like religious school, we got very, very, very interesting people who came to talk to us about spiritualism in life. It's very, very advanced for an Anglican church in the 1960s. And I remember one guy who had been a missionary, and he'd been all over Vietnam while the war was raging. Wow. And he said the most extraordinary thing that I've never forgotten. And he said they had refugee kids and kids who'd been, saved from war trauma, and they were at this American base being looked after, and before they could repatriate them or do whatever they're going to do. And they were trying to show them things that they'd enjoy, and they were teaching them English, and they had TV shows that had been sent over to help them acclimatize. And one of them was Mr. Ed, the Talking Horse. And they were watching it and, laughing as the horse talks and so on. And one of the Vietnamese kids put his hand up, and he said, what? And he said, when are we going to live as well as the horses in America? And he was just gobsmacked. And he said, well, and he had no answer.
he had no answer, because what we took as a comedy thing was they saw that as a reality. Like even the horses have a room and a bed and whatever. And he said that he realized that what he had been doing was perpetuating a culture to them that wasn't their own, but was something they were looking at going, why don't we have this? And I've never forgotten that guy.
Yeah.
And he went into advertising like one of the madmen. And he wrote the jingle. You'll wonder where the yellow went when you brush your teeth
with Pepsodent.
Pepsodent. Exactly. he wrote that jingle, and he was amazing. Like we got the most amazing people who made us think about our place in the world rather than Jesus did this, Jesus did that, and so on. And so and I think that I had a sense of, actually, if the spiritualism tied in with performance was, as a choir boy, we performed, and we sang Bach and Mozart and Beethoven and Dvorak and like really hard stuff that was about committing to it 100% back when I was 7, 8 years old.
This is Not That Kind of Rabbi. I'm Ralph Ben-Murgy, and my guest this time is actor, director Mackenzie Gray.
And so my father has spent a lot of time in the Middle East. We had a lot of Jewish, he was an interior designer and architect. And we had a lot of Jewish customers, and I went to more Friday night dinners, and, I'd been to temple, I'd been to things, and I got a lot from both of those religions, and so I had quite a bit of Judaism growing up, because I think what in Judaism is beautiful is that, first of all, the religion is questioned, you're allowed to question, which I think is healthy. But it's also about if you look at Passover or, for instance, it's about deliverance. And it's not just about the escape from Egypt. It's not just about arrival in the promised land. It's what do you do with that arrival? What is your responsibility when you have been delivered? And I really love that that had a lot of effect on me. I actually dated a rabbi's daughter for 3 years, Elizabeth Marmer. I don't know if you remember her, wonderful actress.
Rabbi Dov Marmer.
Yeah, Dov Marmer from Holy Blossom.
Holy Blossom.
And I don't think he was
thrilled,
very keen on it. He wasn't. And we had a very fractured luncheon that Elizabeth's sister set up, because she said, you love Mac and he's a good guy, they should meet. But something very interesting that came up, I mean, telling tales out of school here, but he had trouble with it.
Sure.
And his wife said that he loves our daughter is enough for me. And so that made sense, and we moved on. And in fact, he encouraged me to take part in the Passover week, and I helped host a reception that was before a Seder and so on. He was really great.
Right.
And he was just interested in, do you have faith? Do you believe in that there's a God? And he had told me that he had, after the camps and, in the war, he had struggled with it. And then, over time, it's his story, I shouldn't tell it, but he found God. He found his faith.
Is there a God in your life?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what form it takes, but I do. Yeah. I do feel that there is, and I think that it's I can't define it, but I think there is something higher than us. I think there's something that is what our spirits are all part of, and I think that I do try and live consciously in my life, and part of that's from religious upbringing. I think my mother went to church until she died, and was active in the choir, and her faith was it wasn't about dogma, it was about faith in God, a higher being. And and it's funny, we didn't discuss religion a lot in our family, but when we did, it was never to put it down, it was about possibility.
Right.
And my father believed that we have many incarnations, and he was aware of his former lives in his mind, and he said, and unlike half the people who claim this, I wasn't Napoleon. He said, but I think I was a foot soldier, and I was Because when he went to the Middle East, he got off the plane. He was with the British Army, and going to Palestine and all of that, the transition in 47. He was there in 46, actually. And he got off the plane, and he looked around, and he said, I've been here before.
Mm.
He had an uncanny feeling that he'd been there before. And wherever they went, and the SAS went places that other people didn't go, it was like he was reliving a part of his life that he knew he'd been there before. It was very profound.
So in you, at the time of you have to sign this, you might have your leg amputated today instead of us just taking a look at it. And from there, is there any God thing there? And it can take any form. It can be like, a question to God as to why this would happen to you, or it could be faith and support, or it could be nothing.
Yeah, I guess I thanked more so when I had the full septicemia and I was dying.
Right.
That was a profound moment where I actually said, I'm not ready yet.
Right.
Don't take me. I'm not ready. And I was like digging it in, and they're slapping me across the face. But it was like that was where I was actually communing with the universe or God or whatever. Like, I'm not ready to go.
I'm not ready.
I'm not ready. And that was a much more profound moment than just accepting the leg. Although I did kind of ask the universe or God or how, I didn't phrase it in any way.
Right.
Like, I want this to go well, and I don't want to have it go wrong, and I want to be able to walk again.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
I did ask them. Yeah, I did, but it was more when I was dying on the table, that like 6 months earlier.
Yeah, that must have been that's a real struggle. I mean, that's a real decision. I'm either going to just let go, or
it was very tempting to let go, because you go into this peaceful place where you just, okay, I'm going to sleep. I'm just going to stop. And your mind maybe, or your body craves just going away. But I knew that if I went away, I wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
And that's when mechanism of self-preservation kicks in, but it's a spiritual thing. It's definitely a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
I said out loud, I'm not ready. Don't,
What a thing.
So, I'm not sure who I was talking to, but it was to God or to...
Well, it's making yourself available. It's not a question of destination. Like, as people who listen to my podcast know, God for me is not a noun. It's not a guy. Yeah. It's a verb. It's the action of creation, perpetual creation that is the universe. And this is our human moment in this. We just surf through this human moment. But there are decisions to be made along the way of that human lifespan. Some are in our control and some aren't. But that one was a moment of, I choose to keep going. And if this lady should just keep hitting me because I choose to keep going.
Yes. And then, I mean, she brought my girlfriend in to
shaking
talk to me and hold my hand and help me with that. And it was, and she almost fainted when she saw him cut the toe open and take us out, because it's horrible to see. But she stuck with it because she wanted to be there for me. So, it was a weird transforming energies going on. But again, we come back to passion. I have a passion for life. I love being alive. And I think, I don't know if I was conscious of it before I got diabetes at 13, but I was on death's door. They didn't know much about diabetes back in 1970. It wasn't as common, and some neighbors of ours who we lived in this little cul-de-sac street, they'd seen I was losing weight rapidly. I was constantly thirsty. I was wetting the bed. And my parents thought, is he going through a weird adolescence? Like, we didn't really know, but I was a hyperactive kid and I'd lost 30 pounds. I was a really skinny. And the neighbors saw a PSA, one of the first ever PSAs about diabetes. Are you losing weight? You're thirsty or whatever? You might have diabetes, And they came and told my parents, and they'd maybe heard of it, but they didn't really know about it. And so they said, we know a doctor. He's a wonderful pediatrician. He's great with kids, and he's a diabetic specialist. So they took me over to if you remember the old doctor's hospital.
Yep, sure.
And they had a clinic there, and Dr. Linzen was the doctor, and he was one of the big authorities on diabetes. And apparently he saw me from like down the hall, like 30 feet away. And he said, that boy's a diabetic.
Mm-hmm. Type 1.
And they put me right in the hospital right away. And I used to faint dead at the sight of needles. I was not, I didn't like needles. And, their IVs hooked up, and, I couldn't eat. They were trying to get my blood sugar down. And then eventually they were doing needles, and they brought in an orange and a vial of water in an insulin thing and the needles. And they said, practice this, so you'll have to be good at this. And they were showing me how to pinch up the skin on the orange on it. And I was just 13. I just turned 13. And I said, so how long do I have to do this for? And he said, I thought you understood that it's for the rest of your life. And he said, anyway, we've got to go, moving on, but, keep practicing that needle and get good at it. And I lost it. I burst into tears. And there was this Jamaican nurse, big, sort of very bold woman. And she came in and saw me crying. And I was the needle and stuff there. And she said, what are you crying for? And I said, I've just been told I have to do this for the rest of my life. I thought it was just for a little while. I didn't know. And she sat down and she said, it's for the rest of your life, but it doesn't mean anything. Do you know how many famous people are diabetics? How many people who do everything? You can do anything. Nothing you can't, it's nothing you can do. And she said, I've got a piece of paper I'm going to bring in for you. And she goes off and she brought a list of all these famous people who are diabetics. Hockey players like
Bobby Clark.
Bobby Clark hadn't started, but Lou Nanny from Minnesota North Stars, and Dan Rowan from Rowan and Martin's Laughing,
right.
Politicians and all. I can't remember the list. I've got it somewhere in my book that Dr. Linzen gave me. I still have it, but you can't imagine what that did to me. Like it was amazing. And she had a thick Jamaican accent, and I used to imitate it to her, and she thought it was hilariously funny because I was a good mimic, and so she taught me Jamaican patois and, like things I still have in my head today. Right. But
fantastic.
She
fantastic.
Was it's just fantastic. She was a fantastic.
I mean, it seems you get the angels you need at the time you need them.
I believe we do.
Yeah. I mean, you had her, and then you had, I'm going to call her Madame Slapabout. You had her.
Nurse Slapabout. Yes.
Nurse Slapabout. It's all fantastic. Well, listen.
Anyway, lucky.
Yeah. Well, we can decide we're lucky or we're cursed. You have gone to lucky. And it's one of the things that drew me to wanting to have this conversation was that yours was not about, when people talk about, I battled this, I fought cancer, it's like, you're not battling and fighting. Something has happened. It is. And what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to do something that helps yourself? And in the case of all those people who resonated with you on social media, for them too, I bet you there was a lot of people in there who were just like, well, for God's sake, if that's happening to him and he's doing this and I'm I'm complaining about this, then whatever, right? So
a lot of people said that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm complaining about COVID and I can't go out and meet my friends for coffee and you lost your leg. I'm going to shut up now.
And you're looking for the prosthetic somewhere. Where the hell did I put that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, don't leave your leg around.
That's right. Do you have my leg? I thought I had. Where's my leg? That wouldn't be good.
Where did I put it? What? Oh my! Yeah.
Don't step on it.
Always have two. Always have two.
Always have two of everything. Mackenzie Gray, I thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ralph. And I love your whole ethos, I guess, or essence. It's fabulous, and it's nice to. When you were on CBC, I used to love watching you, and I loved how articulate you were and intelligent. And we all, I mean, the theater community, we all really dug what you were about. And I'm glad you're still doing it and still being, active and provocative and thoughtful. It's a great thing.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
So
My guest actor, director, inspiration, Mackenzie Gray. I'll end with what the Buddhists say. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy.
thank you. And the same to you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
My name is Ralph Benmergui. This is Not That Kind of Rabbi. Patreon.com/NTKR. If you'd like to do a little support, that's good. Subscribe. It always helps when you go and do things with people that way. And take care of each other. That's the most important thing. It's not just about taking care of ourselves. It's about taking care of each other. Because this is the journey. And on a journey, you need a little support once in a while. So don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to give it. Use your generosity in the best way you possibly can. Take care. Bye-bye.
Ciao.